would you just begin starting off by sharing your testimony? You were not born in the United States, correct?
Oh, no, I was born in Wiesbaden, Germany. My mother's German. She lived there pretty much her whole life for a while. My father's from the Virgin Islands, and he was in the military. That's where he met her. And traveled around, a lot of different places. And then he decided to get out the army. And so we moved back to the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas. And unfortunately, my mother, she pretty much was abused her whole life. And she got into that marriage and, there was abuse and things there. And I never forget, I was maybe 6 years old and she just came and pulled me out of school in the middle of the day, me and my siblings. And I didn't know where we were going, but I went straight from the school to the airport. And she said that the Lord told her to, move to Chicago, which was interesting because I have no family, in the United States at all. They're either, in Germany, Spain, the Virgin Islands. So that was just like a random place,
Wow.
Chicago. And I remember landing in Chicago, like, what's going on? I'm a kid, so I didn't figure it out. I knew there was some things between my mom and my father, but some lady met us in the airport and took us straight to a shelter. And we were living in a shelter, and I remember just asking my mom, every day, like, when's daddy coming? When's daddy coming? She's like, oh, he he'll come eventually, and he never did come. And while I was in the shelter, this is actually something that I had, kind of blocked out of my mind for a while, and it kind of came back. But there was some women in there, and I still don't have like all the details. But she got me in a room by myself and pretty much molested me. That's the bottom line. And as a child, like I didn't know what was going on in the moment, and that's probably why I kind of blocked it out. And it was just
How old were you?
6, 7, something like that. And I remember what was happening. And I realized like when the Lord brought it back to my memory, it was like, wow, like I really blocked it out. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to defend myself or anything like that. And it does something,
Yeah.
there's a spiritual world, and we see that, sometimes it comes out differently in different people. They might get promiscuous. They might get curious. I think, honestly, maybe by the grace of God, for me, I knew it happened. And I was so stunned that I just blocked it out. And maybe that was like the Lord's,
It's mercy.
protection. And even as a man, it's kind of hard for, men to want to share that kind of stuff. It's
Yeah, for
hard to be
sure.
vulnerable. It's kind of, you don't want to, oh, somebody took advantage of me. This happened,
Yep.
but the reason, I started telling people about it is I had some very firsthand experience. As many people know, I've, been divorced, different things while I was in the army, but I had some firsthand experience seeing what sexual abuse can do in marriages, especially when it's happening in the church, especially when it's pastors that are doing it. And I had some personal experience with that stuff where you see like the scars are so bad it can damage families, for generations. And
Yeah.
so I started, having to stand up to pastors, that people who were very close to me came and, they said this happened, and, the denial. And then there's like this making,
So
that
did you
individual.
experience denial in your life by spiritual leaders?
Um, For me, because it was blocked out, it was kind of one of those things. By the time I kind of started dealing with it and
Yeah.
remembering, it was like fine. But there were people, that I had very close relationship with, that they went through it, and I saw like it
Mm.
messed them up. And because we're
Yeah.
trying to protect the reputation of the pastor, it's like,
Come
you
on.
know, the individual was feeling crazy, and they're wrestling. Did this really happen to me? Am I to blame? And then there's the shame, the all of that kind of stuff. And that's why I realized the importance of you have to talk about it. You're overcome by
Come
the
on.
testimony,
Come
and you
on.
need that freedom, because it is therapy to release it. The truth will set you free. Like sometimes you just have to confront, okay, this did happen,
Yes.
and then it just, as a grown man looking at that, I remember being in that shelter thinking like, okay, what's happening? But this person was an adult. So you're thinking like, okay, there's some kind of authority there. And then it just really puts you in the mindset of, the children that this is happening to, and they don't know what to say. They're confused. I didn't grow up like in a, it's not how it is today where kids, they got all kinds of sexual stuff over the phones and they're young and they know about it. Like I didn't know anything about none of that stuff. So I was really shocked like what was happening in that
Sure.
moment. And so I just think it's very important. Anybody that's been through that,
Mm.
especially if you're in the kingdom, that's part of the healing process. You acknowledge it, and there's obviously
Yeah.
not that none is worse than the other. There's a lot of different types of sexual abuse that happen out there,
Yep.
but it's important, for yourself, number one, to just confront it, to address it, but somebody else needs to hear it because the reality is they're in bondage, and
Yes.
that shame and that guilt, is just hindering them. And Christ wants us to be whole and he wants
Yes.
us to be free. And so, one thing I would say from that, I probably think what I learned through all of that dealing with sexual abuse, um, I look at people and now when I pray for them, I always see the child. I see the child in
Hmm.
them. And there's grown adults, 30, 40, 50. There's men,
Wow.
big old muscles you would never think. And inside of them, there's a child that's hurting. There's a
Hmm.
child that's afraid. There's a person that there's still like residue on their mind.
Hmm.
Why did this happen
Yeah.
and things like that. And
Yes.
so I believe it's real important to just address it, confront it, get it out there, so the child and a lot of people could be healed.
A lot of people that were sexually abused when they were younger, like you, end up having, and you named a few of them, different temptations and struggles, and they don't realize the connection.
Hmm.
They don't realize these struggles as a teenager, as a young adult, into 30s, 40s. What is the root of these things that are tormenting me? But this spiritual tie that took place
Yeah.
with this demonically influenced individual that put their hands on me in a way they never should have, in
Right.
an intimate way, that there was a transfer of this spiritual darkness, and a lot of people end up carrying that. And I would love for you to share the other part of your testimony, the struggles that came later. But I think so many people don't realize I actually have to go back to that 6-year-old moment. I have to go back to the 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old moment, whether it's pornography that was introduced the first time, whether it was sexual abuse, but that is the place to begin and start healing. And so I want you to talk about some of the things that you begin to struggle with later, because I feel like that helps other people
Mhm.
identify, oh my goodness, I have these struggles, or my teenagers, my young adults are having these teenagers. I need to go ask them, was there something that happened in their childhood that I'm unaware of?
Yeah, so that's what we always talk about. You have the fruit and then you have the root. And you got to understand that the devil is very strategic and he fights dirty. So you understand that we left my father at the time. So already like I'm hurt, I'm wounded, where's my dad? Then these things come along. And so I remember, growing up, we were just poor, my mom pulled me out of school. I was getting into, so many fights and different things like that. And like I said, sometimes you see a kid just being bad, you don't know why. I felt like I was fighting every day, fighting for my life.
Like just angry.
Yeah, just some anger there. And people, I think, maybe saw me as like a little bit of a target as well, and she put me out in homeschool. I started working like at 11 years old, like hard construction, like $2 an hour, 8 hours a day, and there was this thing in me where I wanted to prove, that I was worthy, and so I
Mm.
remember my mom, old German woman, she was a little bit blunt, like she was hard on me, if she felt
Hmm.
like you was being dumb or stupid, she's gonna tell you. But when your
Hmm.
mom is saying it, it has some weight.
Yeah.
And so I remember working for my boss and he's teaching me how to paint. And he'd come in there sometimes if I made a mistake, and just slap me up, just like, hey, are you stupid or something? And the words, was hitting me. I was like 11 years old and I really wanted his approval. So there was a combination of wounds. There was a combination of you don't feel worth it. And by the time I got 12 years old, I felt like I was such a burden that I was gonna kill myself. And I walked
Mm.
down to this bridge in Chicago over Lakeshore Drive, and it was like there was just this demonic presence all around me. And it was like the devil was just talking to me. Nobody loves you. Nobody cares for you. That's why your dad didn't show up. Your mom can't stand you. You know what I'm saying? And I remember like it was just cold and the tears was coming down. And I was getting ready to jump.
Mm.
And I'll never forget, I felt like the hand of God grabbed the back of my neck. It was just like oil. It just felt like oil was running down my back. He said, son, don't do it. Like I got a plan for your life. And it was like he hugged me. And so I grew up not in a very
Mm.
affectionate house, you know, and we weren't like the hug, kiss type family. I used to watch like the Cosby Show and say, man, I want a family, you know, like that. And interesting enough, even though like I had got you know, the molested and all that kind of stuff, I'm somehow managed to be a virgin until I was about 19. But then, you know, that it was like some kind of, you know, whatever you want to call it, lust, whatever. And so I joined the army.
Mm.
I felt like, you know, I didn't want to be a burden to my mom. You know, we're just poor, you know, just and I want to get out of here. Less thing she got to worry about. And because I was not healed, I wanted to have a family so bad. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have 12 kids, you know, and I'm gonna have what I never had. I'm gonna have what was on TV. So first girl that I meet that, you know, she was nice to me, you know, boom, have a baby. I'm gonna be there. I'm not gonna be like my dad. We get married. Um, and when you're unhealed, you can form bonds with people. It's not that necessarily someone is bad or that you're bad, but sometimes that trauma attaches to
Yeah.
trauma, which is another part of, you know, the enemy's strategy. And so, you know, things were just rough, just fighting, arguing. I think we were married for about 6, 7 months. And then the army sent me to Iraq. And I was in Baghdad for about a year. That made things worse. Came back, tried to work it out, and they sent me to
Mm.
Afghanistan back to back. So I was in Afghanistan for a year, and then pretty much we got a divorce. So we were never. I don't even think, you know, we had 3 kids, but I was never there. I was always,
Mm.
you know, overseas. And so that crushed me, you know, and it's just like there was some, you know, verbal abuse, some arguing on both sides, like, you know, we're unhealed. And it just almost seemed like, you know, like a pattern. Like my life is following the same pattern. Like the love's not there. The love that you wanted, you didn't get from your dad, you
Mm.
didn't get from your mom, that affection, now you're not getting it. And it was just like eluding me. And so I backslid and I was just in the world for a while, you know, and clubbing, just, you know, sleeping around, committing adultery, fornication, all that stuff, you know, and we eventually got a divorce. And there was this girl that I grew up with, so I move her
Mm.
in. I'm not wanting to get married, so boom, she gets pregnant, and I'm just like, look, I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna get this family. You know what I'm saying? One way or
What
the
kid is
other.
this at this
Yeah.
point? Kid number.
So that's kid number 4, right? And so I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get the. But really, what people don't understand when they judge it, I was chasing love,
Yeah.
you know, as like that's what I wanted.
Mhm.
And I wasn't even actually happy, like
Yeah.
being out there clubbing and messing. Like that wasn't my thing, but because of sin, because
Yep.
of wounds, and because I felt I had to prove something. And so I remember being in the club, and I'm just making this a long story short because I want people to see, you know, like the devil will give you options. You know, if I had went through maybe the healing process and things like that, it would have went differently. But then I didn't
Mhm.
have nobody in my life. I didn't have my father. I didn't have nobody I could call and like get that advice, get that counsel. The Bible says there's safety in a multitude of counseling. So I was just kind of learning through trial and error. And so I remember just being backslidden. My family's gone. I'm in the club, and this girl that I went to church with, she walks up. She's just drunk, and she kisses me, and she's like, "You know, we're not supposed to be in here, right?" I'm like, "Man, get off of me! Like I'm having a good time. You know, you're messing it up." But it was spiritual. That's what people don't understand. The
Mm.
Bible says, you know, spiritual warfare is real. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal. And
Right.
I knew something was happening in that moment, but it was like God was giving me a warning, and I didn't listen. And probably 2 minutes later, these guys came. Out of everybody in the club, they came up to me, threw a drink on me, and it was like, "Go buy me another drink." And it was like you could feel that atmosphere was demonic, you know? And you know, me having my wounds, I gotta prove myself, you know, you're not gonna bully me. So I said a couple of you know, cuss words or whatever, and it's like the club exploded. And it was me and two of my military buddies, and we got stumped out by like 30, 40 people. And I remember like laying on the floor, just getting kicked in the head, getting kicked everywhere. Like it was hands,
Mm.
feet everywhere. And I said, Lord, if you get me out of this, you know, I will go back to church. You know, like, and it was so bad. Like
Promises we make to the Lord.
man, in those moments when it gets real, I remember like a pair of Nikes. They were brown and green, kicking me in the face. Like I remember it clear as day. Like that's how
Wow.
bad it was. And I got out of it. And I remember being outside of the club and went right back into my flesh. I'm like, look at 30 of you guys, just 3 of us. And I went back to the club the next week. And same thing, like you have these moments, like you could tell, like the same way when I was gonna kill myself, it's like something in the atmosphere changes. And we leave in the club, my friend says something to these guys, and man, they just, you know, get ready, like we're gonna fight again. I kind of talk them out of it, get in the truck. I pull out of the club parking lot. 2 cars pull up one side, another car pulls up in front, 2 cars pull up on the other side.
Mm.
And it's like, I don't know how to explain it. You feel the atmosphere, like it's
Yeah.
demonic. And they roll down their windows and they point some guns and they say, you know, what's up? You guys talking crazy or whatever. My homeboy's in the back. We got 2 guns in the back. He grabs one of the pistols, and I remember he swings it. And it's like everything's happening in slow motion. He swings it and he puts it out the window and he says, I don't give a F. We can all die tonight.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, like, I cannot die tonight.
Yeah.
I'm in a lost state. And
Wow.
just
That's
like
the thought that comes to your mind is I'm in a lost
I'm
state. Like, where am I going next?
immediately that's what I'm thinking. Like I cannot, and I have 3 kids, and I'm like, I'm not gonna be there for them and all that kind of stuff. And the same way when I was standing on that bridge in that darkness, like it was like everything was happening in slow motion. I felt like God invaded that truck. And I never forget, I looked out in my corner eye. This guy got out the vehicle, he cocked the pistol, he started walking up to the window. And something in me was like, my mom's praying for me. It's 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. She's up, she's praying for me. And the Holy Spirit was like, look up.
Mm.
And I looked in the rearview mirror and I saw that they didn't block the back of the truck. So I just put it in reverse, hit the gas, they started shooting. Ping, ping, you could hear the bullets hitting the truck. And a long story short, I'm pulling away. They're shooting at the truck. They follow us for a little bit, and eventually they stop following us. And we pull over. I'm looking at everybody that's in the truck. Nobody's hit. Bullet holes in the roof. There's actually like a bullet stuck in the plastic, and I just knew. I just started bawling. I said, like,
God
God
spared your
spared me.
life.
And then I went back to church, and you know, it wasn't perfect, but started going through a healing process, started confronting things. And, you know, then you start seeing like, oh, I did this and I did that because I was looking for validation. I was trying to prove myself. I was trying to prove, you know, that I was worthy because
Mm.
molestation, my father not being there, you know, not getting the affection, not getting the approval. There's a lot of things that I did trying to find love, trying to find approval. And so anybody who's like any kind of victim of abuse, when the devil can beat you down to
Hmm.
having some kind of mindset where you don't see yourself as a child of God and you don't see yourself the way that, you know, God sees you, you settle.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching this clip from the Holy Disruption podcast. To watch the full episode, please click the video on the screen or visit the link in the description.